So I was thinking, while we've got a couple of big brains in the room, let's solve the incel problem, shall we?
Small thing.
Yes, just a little thing. Because this sort of thing comes up every now and again. And whenever I look at the comments, I'm always being told that, that you don't understand, Dan, that the dating scene today is absolutely cancerous.
Probably is.
Yeah, well, yeah, possibly. But I thought, that's a bit of cope. So what I did is I set myself up with a Tinder profile, and I thought I would investigate.
Your wife was thrilled with that.
Yeah,
oh, darling, well, I'm just investigating the dating world.
She's used to me by now. But so I set myself up. I went to the effort of writing myself a nice profile as well. So I took the whole thing sort of incredibly seriously.
I'm a dissident rights content creator committed to the overthrow of the globalist managerialist parasite class for a return to more traditional values.
Yeah.
I require intelligent conversation and not a fat.
Yes.
Once won a Who'd You Wed competition against every man who ever lived.
Yes.
While hoping not to put you off, but giving women the vote was probably a civilizational level mistake. 6'2", blue eyes, bit of podge, British teeth.
Yeah, so
that's a strong opener.
I thought that was good.
If you're a woman on a dating app, you go, okay, well at least I remember this guy.
Yes, and the bit
he's not a Dino.
The bit at the end, we're giving the women the vote was a mistake. That's very important. That's called a neg. You've got to give a neg, and apparently that's how it works.
For anyone watching, we're all married, and we've been married not to each other. We're all married to our wives. We all have kids. We've been married for years, and it was probably 2009 was the last time I looked at a dating site called Plenty of Fish.
I kind of missed the whole.
But even then, that was like I never had any success there. I always had success with women in real life. That's how I'm. Well,
in order to make the experiment viable, we also got one of the lovely Lotus ladies in the office to also sign up for an account at the same time.
Right.
And we thought, basically, we'd see, what happens. Are we going to get a disparate experience?
I think I can predict the results here.
Well, you say that, because, we set it up at the end of the day and headed off home. And basically, after 2 hours, I got a ping.
Oh, really?
Yes. So I got my first hit, and I thought, well, this is good. There we go. That's my one like has come through.
So there was a lady who was like, you know what? I do hate votes for women as well.
Or reading, it's one of the two. But yeah,
and the global
journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step and minor come through. So, got in touch with a lovely Lotus lady to say, okay, had a hit. Where are you at this point? Do you want to guess?
I bet it's like 300 or something.
Next slide. There we go.
Oh God,
this is literally after 2 hours.
Yeah,
237 likes. Yes. Now, don't feel too bad for me because come the following day, I did get a 400% increase in my likes, and she only got an 85% increase in her likes.
To be fair, though, there's a lot of room for improvement on your one.
Yes.
You've got one.
Yes.
She's got 237.
Well, I was hoping not to make that connection, but yes. So then the experiment ended because she got blocked. Yeah, she got blocked the following day, and I think it was because we didn't want to have to sit there and go through them manually, so we paid the £15 in order to see straight through. And I think they were so put off by a woman actually paying for dating that they thought that she was a fake, and they kicked her off.
Really?
Yes.
Who Tindered it?
Yes.
Oh, right.
Yeah, they blocked her out, so that didn't work. But
you're not a real woman because you paid Tinder money.
Yes.
That's an amazing algorithm they've got going on there.
Yeah, it's probably true most of the time.
Oh, I don't doubt
I would imagine. But it makes it.
You can imagine the Tinder officer. Hang on, there's a woman who's paid. What? No, there hasn't. That's never happened.
Yeah, that's not how.
Oh, that's a spam.
One of the things I'm fascinated by is that I wonder if we workshopped your intro a little bit, would it change? It's rather than I am a dissident, right? I mean, I am a sensible centrist committed to
traditional English gentleman.
Yeah, or if you just finesse the language a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'd also be interested in a version which is I am committed to social justice. I love feminism type thing to see which one would play.
Well, actually, so this is the interesting point that she made a number of interesting points. I mean, the first thing is a lot of people, they always blame the women on these dating sites for their preferences and about how they're sort of seeking out the top tier men. And that's always the sort of the standard pushback and stuff. But she made a very reasonable point. If I've got 400 people who have liked me, well, of course I'm going to be picky. I mean, anyone would be. So you can completely understand the dynamic of how it works. And the other thing I'm thinking is, from the guy's perspective, because when we were in the dating market, basically pulling required going to the pub and being the best choice within the pub that could still stand at 2 a.m.
And often, like, those choices were quite narrowed down for you.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of the men in the pub would be there with their wives or girlfriends.
Yeah. So the point is, if you went to the pub often enough, you would be the best choice sooner or later.
Yeah.
Whereas in now's world, you basically need to be the best option within a 26-mile radius.
Out of hundreds and hundreds of eligible men who are already showing their interest.
Who've already got their sort of photos up, so they don't take a day off, they don't sleep. The profile is always there. It's a bit bloody harder to stand out in that situation.
I don't envy that at all.
Yeah. So this tweet makes a good point. A friend of yours, Nima's.
So what? Just as a brief thing, I don't know who this person is, but I've seen you talking about them. Why don't you like?
I do.
What does RFH? What does RFH stand for?
I can't. I'm not sure if I can say on air. Rad Femme, and then the name of a famous mid-century German.
Oh, really?
A painter.
Painter, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, right, okay. Failed painter, I believe.
Yeah. I mean, she's an interesting.
Hollow Earth Turf.
She is.
It's entertaining.
Generally speaking, a dissident, but she's also a radical feminist.
A dissident for what?
She's also a radical feminist.
That's an interesting.
And I mean,
that's fun.
Even though a lot of our friends block her, I have an interest in.
How could you block such an entertaining looking profile?
I just think she's really okay. She's really good at Twitter. She just like how I say Ash Sakar is like objectively good at Twitter.
Yes,
she is also objectively good at riling up the lads.
Farming engagement.
She makes a good point here. She says that 85% of the UK's dating app users is male.
Yes.
Yes,
which really highlights the issue, doesn't it? It's a lot of very thirsty men and a much smaller pool of thirsty women are given a much greater, like our lady was saying, it's much easier to be picky when you've got hundreds in a couple of hours to the other guy's got one.
Well, yes. I mean, it's a bit like trying to pull at the event that we've just come from. I mean, there was a disco on the second night, but it was
mostly male.
Would have been rather slim pickings, which is all leading to. Have we got the next one?
But sorry, can we go back to that? Just a quick thing, right? So I agree actually completely with this comment she's made. Your dating app data doesn't mean anything, by the way. Dating apps are anywhere between 2/3 to 90% male. Women don't like dating apps, and the user experience is designed around gay men, not straight women. Oh, that's totally true. Straight women don't tend to use dating apps. It's the minority who want to go and hook up with some ultra hot guy that they can be totally picky about. That's so that you don't find a woman on a dating app. It's just a rule of thumb.
And I think it's worth pointing out that the reason that I am more tolerant of this woman is because from a certain point of view, she just tells basic truths to the kind of trad LARP crew, basic truths. About
the basic truth under there. I'm so shocked to learn that women don't like the Dial-A app and that it's filled with men. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Like it's not very deep insight, but it's obviously true.
Yeah, quite. Well, what this is leading to is where's the next chart? Are we going to pull that? This chart is basically showing the rise of incels. Yeah. So it's basically men under 30 who have had zero sexual partners. 2018 is when the data stops, and it was at a third then, and that was pre COVID, where basically the only option you had were these dating apps. So that must be significantly higher at this point.
Probably, yeah. I can't imagine it's gone down.
I mean, this suggests to me. I mean, I remember reading a fascinating book years ago called "The Evolution of Everything" by Matt Ridley. Now, I probably disagree with most of the things he says in that, because he says that everything's bottom up, and I say everything's top down.
Yeah.
But a really interesting chapter in that book about the rise of monogamy and why monogamous religions won out over polygamous ones, like where you've got the sultan with the harem. And his basic point is that in that scenario, you've got a huge number of men locked out of the sex market because they're all with the sultan. They're all part of the harem.
Yes.
Okay. And eventually what happens is that these sex-starved men start getting violent, essentially.
Yeah.
Right. So
because marriage is basically domesticating a man.
So if you have a look at what happened in Middle Eastern cultures, you kept on having these uprisings against the Sultan because he was him and his family were just monopolizing sex.
Just love the idea of like a 14th century incel uprising against the Sultan and his eunuchs.
I mean, I'm not making this up.
I know. It's just really funny.
This is a point I was going to come to later. But basically, what we're going to get is we are seeing an oversupply of incels, and then later on, we're going to see an oversupply of spinsters.
Yes.
So what does that do to a society when you've got all of that sort of as you said, the sort of raw male energy with no outlet on one side, and spinsters a few years later.
In a way, when the left are worried about the quote unquote incel problem, it is actually legitimate because you have all of this pent up energy and it's got nowhere to go.
But also, there's a fundamental unfairness about it as well, right? It's not the fault of these young men that women aren't interested in. They didn't create the system. They didn't set the scene. They grew up in a world that was radically against them and in favor of the sort of promiscuous Tinder using women.
And what's very interesting is that one figure we should mention, talking about the Sultan, is that there's the rise of a kind of new Sultan. Like, that's what Andrew Tate is. He's an unofficial modern day Sultan who is monopolizing women. And so his message is, and the message of people like him is, well, listen, it doesn't take much to stand out in this market. You might as well make hay while the sun shines.
Yeah. Good
so that's one message that gets out there. But of course, it exacerbates the problem because the more Andrew Tates there are, the higher that percentage of incels goes up because they are monopolizing more and more of the market. So it's kind of interesting dynamic playing out.
It's also interesting that there is a eunuch class coming into being as well, which I remember reading something about this a while ago. Like, essentially every era of history has got the way of making the eunuchs. And it's like, that's weird. That can't be true. And then you look around now and you're thinking, wow.
Be careful on that. We're on YouTube.
Well, I won't go very much further, but what I'm saying is it's
they could create the Unsullied. Maybe there'll be like a real life Daenerys who leads
it's happening.
If that's what it takes.
Yeah. And the flip side of this is let's go to Chris's tweet, if we can call that up. Yeah. So it's basically the approach thing.
Chris Williamson.
So this is pointing out that 55% of single men say that they haven't approached a woman in the last year. Well, no wonder you're bloody incel then.
Well, yeah, but I mean there are all kinds of civilizational incentives against doing it.
Oh yeah. So but I'll run through the stats because they're quite relevant. He's saying 70% of young women under 30 are basically saying that they wished that they were approached more.
Yeah.
Whereas when you get over 40 with women, it flips, and now the majority of them say that they don't want to be approached
because they're married. Yeah.
So you've got this curious dynamic where female nature is basically requiring men to make the first move.
Yeah.
They want that overwhelmingly. 86% of them say they want men to make the first move. But you've set up this culture with all of the sort of, you've got the Me Too, the Gillette ad.
I think it's more than that as well, though. There is obviously all of that where it's a feminist cultural inclination to try and get men to actually stop approaching women. But also, as the balance of power has shifted, women now are the better educated, they're the better employed, they have more material wealth, and they have systems that are loaded in their favor. And so this all works against the courage of men and the self-confidence of men, because a young man can't say, well, I've got a great job, I've got a great education, at least I'm physically an impressive person in myself.
Well, that's another one of the paradoxes, is as you go up the educational strata for women, they find it harder and harder to find a male partner.
Yes.
So college-educated women, that much more of them are single because they can't find somebody who meets their standards. So I'm not necessarily saying stop educating women. I'm just saying that if we were to do that, they would be happier.
And young men would also be happier.
I actually, a friend of mine that I know, that I've known since my school days, get married later this year, which obviously meant we went on a stag do, right? Mm-hmm. So earlier this year, I went to Magaluf. Can you imagine me?
Not really, actually. I can't.
That's why I had the Hawaiian shirt, because I went to.
And how was it?
Well, I actually saw an example of this up close because me and my 40, like all of us lads who are literally 40 years old, married with kids, and a bit well, you can see, past our peaks,
body positive,
past our peaks, dad boards or whatever. Yeah. We were out, and but of course we remember we just reverted to doing what we did when we were 18. We were out, it was Magaluf.
Yeah.
And when we were in this little club there, group of Zuma lads walked in. They must have been about 18, 19. Now bear in mind, we're in Magaluf. There are women everywhere. They're drunk and they're in Magaluf. And,
if you can't score here, you can't score.
Right. And literally, these 5 lads walked in. They bought like a bottle of thingy. They sat around the table and they just went on their phones. And honestly, for 2 hours, they were just all of them sitting quietly on their phones as I watched my old school friends dominate the dance floor and basically hoover up the attention. I mean, they didn't do anything.
Sure.
They're committed
men. They probably still dance.
What I'm saying is they dominated the attention of the girls. That those guys, if that was us back when we were 18, they would have been.
Because we're not afraid of approach. That's it. We haven't had that beaten out of us. I don't know. It's like when you were at that age, but when I used to walk into a bar with my mates, we basically walk through the door, just go like that, and maybe see each other once or twice again through the rest of the night, just interacting with people in the club.
I mean, I don't want to get into tactics where you send in the hot one, 2 wingmen, but
But the point is, these young men had no confidence to not even approach a woman, but to enjoy themselves.
Not even to talk to each other or dance. Yeah. They would just.
Oh right, yes.
They would
literally just interact.
They were just on their phones.
Because that's the thing. Like, okay, you can, there are various things, but like just having a group of guys standing around talking and having fun is an attractive thing and this is, I'm not much of a dancer, but what me and my mates used to do, just go to a pub or a club and we'd just enjoy ourselves with each other, have a laugh, fool around. And then a couple of women on the peripheral, someone will start talking to one. And so
if they see you having fun, you seem like a fun person to talk to.
Exactly. And so they want to talk to you. And so suddenly now you are talking to women without really having done anything than just enjoyed yourself. And these lads, and I've seen it before as well, but when you go into a pub or something and just sat there on the phone, it's like, you've got no options here.
But also you've got no chance. When you're doing that, you're basically taking yourself out of the game, as it were.
Yeah.
And the thing is that in an environment like that, in a way, Andrew Tate is right. It's not that hard to stand out, And in many cases, all it is like a job, presentability, and a bit of confidence. You don't even need to be like.
But the whole thing that we're talking about, the making the approach, it has been beaten out of young men through the things I talked about, the Me Too, the jet lag, and all that kind of stuff. And actually, I'll give you an anecdote. It's quite awful, actually. But there was a company that I wasn't involved in, but a mate of mine was on the board of this company, and they basically had a guy speak to one of the girls and just say, "Oh, would you like to get a drink sometime?" A perfectly normal approach. She kicked up a fuss, went to HR. They looked at it and said, "Oh, come on."
Yeah.
This was a mild, polite response. But then what happened is the management were about to go, yeah, fine, we just knocked this one back. And then they said, oh, hang on a minute, this department is a little bit overstaffed and employment law is a right ball ache. Right. We've got a free pass here. Yeah. And then they thought, yep, we'll do it. So they binned him, but basically to bypass employment law on the whole issue. Yeah.
I mean, I will say probably don't try it on with anybody at work then. In that case.
Yeah.
But another part of this, though, as well, is that one thing you quickly learn, especially as a young man, when you're 18, 17, 18, 19, is that you are going to get knocked back a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And I mean, I remember I had a friend, his tactic for the night was basically
ask every
single girl, and one will say yes. Yeah. Right? Eventually one will say yes. And he's like, well, he doesn't care.
And it's ridiculous, but it works.
Right. But that was, and that he had like, a lot of success, quote unquote, with that sort of thing.
But in our day, they didn't call the police after the third one.
But even if it's not in a nightclub setting, just like asking a girl you quite like out for a drink, you have to be prepared that she's going to knock you back and not let that crush you.
And often, and this, I post these on Twitter quite often where it's some woman being like, men don't even pursue anymore. What's going on? You say no, and then they never talk to you again.
I see a lot of those tweets. It's basically along the lines of, I said no to a guy. Why isn't he pursuing me?
Yeah, because a lot of, but again, this is not something I can advise you to ever do because it's very contextual. It depends on how she says no to you. And the whole thing's kind of a test of your resolve, actually.
Yeah.
But in the modern era, you can't really advise on that. So if a woman says no, just leave it there.
But without going into really advanced tactics, I mean, if you can, I mean, you can also start getting a little gamey, where it's like, well, she expects you get a bit flirty or whatever. She expects you to ask her out, and then you don't do the thing. You kind of knock her off balance a bit. And I mean, in my experience, they'll just ask you out eventually. Just be like, they'll ask you out,
Or they'll at least they'll send like my wife sent a friend with her number to me.
I mean, they'll let you know if they like you.
They'll let you know.
Yeah.
But you've got to show that the interest is there, right?
Women get better at that as they get older. So sort of the over 40 women are not shy in the slightest of sort of letting themselves be known. But the younger women, they kind of don't really know how to do that apart from like sending a friend over. But they struggle with this. So effectively, I've got a meme which we're flipped through. So it's basically this. This is what's happening. Is that it's the older women. They don't like to be approached, and they're sort of force feeding the feminism on young women. So I will then jump to our plug for this episode, which is going to be the evil origins of feminism. So I mean, you on that one? What was?
I am. This is excuse me. This is Connor and I. Because Connor has a particular academic hatred for the original feminists, and he has been through for his degree. He went through all of their stuff and had to read it all. I read most of it for fun, but he's got a really in-depth view of it all, and so we went through it, and he just takes it apart expertly, because this has obviously been just a kind of a real bugbear for him, and that's why we did part 2 of it. Because we did this part 1, that was really good. And I was like, "Oh, brilliant, Connor! How did you know all that?" So I had to do it for my degree, and he was like, "No, there's more." And so I won't spoil any of it, but definitely worth the time, this one.
So that's worth checking out. So I'm going to end on this paper where we got this is from, is it Rob Henderson did this. You've got to bypass that. Yeah, so he did this interesting thing. It's full of stats and so on, which I don't think we can really get into now. But I'll just pick out one or two that I thought were interesting. The striking one for me is that 1 in 6 young men are single, but about 1 in 4 women are. So basically, what's happening is they are sharing high status men.
Right.
They are getting double timed, and I think on some level they must know, but they're kind of happier with that rather than lowering their standards.
It's the Sultan effect, right?
Yeah. That you already talked about. So, but again, what that's going to lead to is spinsters.
Yeah.
Armies and armies of spinsters in the future. We've already touched on the higher expectation point about how basically if you educate women too much, they can't find a man, and they become unhappier over the long term.
Yep.
The political division one, that's quite interesting as well. So that's basically pointing out that people are becoming less and less tolerant, particularly the left, of dating somebody outside of their sphere.
I'm skeptical of this one because of the stupid, sexy Republicans meme. And there are lots of left-wing women who...
but they're forcing themselves into it.
Yeah, but I think there are a lot of them who do find the MAGA guys sexy, these Democrat women, some big MAGA chud, and they just I think that if given enough time in a bar together, I think that'd solve itself.
I think there's, just to go back to old-fashioned economics a minute, Dan, the difference between stated and revealed preference on this one is I mean, it's very different, as I'm sure we all know.
I remember an article a while ago that I think we covered this. Why can't I stop having sex with Republican men? It was just like, well, there's a revealed preference right there, isn't there? It was very insane.
I also think that, I mean, I don't know if he has this stat there, but there's that stat of the boys are getting more conservative and girls are getting more liberal.
Yeah.
I actually think that, speaking just, objectively, women at some level want male attention.
Yes.
They want, this is just a kind of hardwired thing.
Yeah.
And I think the women on that graph are a lagging indicator that eventually the male attention, they'll start saying and doing things to get, because if most of the boys are conservative, they're going to have to appeal to them because they are the boys.
And it's by a factor of 2 to 1 as well. So 8% of women are more liberal, but 20% of men are conservative.
And they will bend. They will bend to your worldview over time.
Yeah.
My wife was a lefty because, well, basically young women are.
Yeah.
When I met her, not anymore.
And this is something that I think a lot of commentators always miss. Like, do you remember back in the youth quake of Corbyn?
Yeah.
But you have a look at the same people now and track them.
Yeah.
they're watching us.
Yeah.
They're a part of our
Aaron
audience.
Bastani.
Like, how many former Corbynistas are now, on our side of things? So the analysis is always they assume that just because somebody's left wing now, they'll always be left wing. But it's same as it's the Peter Hitchens story.
That's a white pill. We got a white pill out of this, and the other white pill that I'll throw in at the end of this is how people meet. It is still overwhelmingly people meet in person, so it's not the apps. Yeah. So I guess if I'm going to end up with any sort of message on this, it's probably get off the apps and just
go to the pub.
Yeah, go to the pubs. Well, there's no Zoomers in the pubs anymore, but you got to find a way to interact with people in real life.
Go to the pub. You're just going to have to do it. You've got no real choice.
Yeah, have fun.
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, why not visit our website, where you can watch the podcast live, uncensored, in full, and for free from 1 o'clock UK time every weekday. And while you're there, for as little as £5 a month, you can get access to all of our premium content. For example, interviews like this, where Bo met with Dr. David Bull, the deputy leader of Reform UK. And if you'd like to see the rest of what Bo is putting out, you can follow Bo over on Twitter at HistoryBro1 and the rest of us over at LotusEaters_com. Till next time, goodbye.